So the vocabulary is actually quite important, and SAT currently emphasizes it a lot, and even the future SAT that they're going to change to in 2016, it really won't change much. I know they're not going to test as many arcane words. Arcane meaning it's just really not well known. Arcane words as they do now maybe, but they're gonna test you on the nuances of the words. But for the current SAT, study the core vocabulary that I have picked. The core vocab is basically made up of, it's a couple thousand words. I know the core goes from 1 to 100, and in each set there are 100. I mean, in each set there are 10 words, so there's a total of 1,000 core words, but you have to learn it with the synonyms, so it's actually way more than that. So one of the most fundamental core words is the word conventional, let's say, right? It is actually one of the most fundamental words, but you should learn it in groups. And on the Edgemonster system that we have the words grouped together, and I picked this statistically, right? The words that are more frequent come out in the earlier core. So core 1 is way more important than core 80, right? It goes in order of frequency, right? So if there's a word like conventional, it should have the root that's involved with this, as well as all the words that are similar. So they're probably listed together like hackneyed, pedestrian. And if you don't, know all these words, it's okay. You'll get used to it. You'll learn by not only the mnemonics of audio, images, and roots, but just by brute force as well, right? Just, practice doesn't make perfect. I really don't agree with that statement, but practice does make you better. And the more you're familiar with this, the vocab, the quicker you're going to read, and then if you can read quicker, then you can solve questions faster, right? Not only for the passages, but for also the sentence completion questions, right? So study the core, review. I can't emphasize review enough. And once you reviewed, or once you think you learned the core words, try the sentence completion sections, and then, if you get it wrong, save it, put it in the review basket for later, and then you could study it again. Now, you could do it that way. And how can you study, or inside the core vocabulary system, there are things called hints, and in the hints there are roots and example sentences. And what I mean by roots is basically all words. Well, English is basically composed of like 60% French and German, right? And it's because of history that makes English, I think, more difficult to learn, because it's just an amalgamation, right? Amalgamation. Whoops, can't spell that. Amalgamation, which means a mixture, right? Amalgamation of, cultures, where this came from, right? So it's a mixture of two languages or multiple languages, and they're all like based off other languages. That's why it's hard to learn, but you can get the roots of words. So let's think about that. So think about a very, very simple word, or I'll give you a harder word, right? So think about the word verisimilitude, right? And this word looks really, really hard. It actually came out as an answer to a CENTCOM question, I think 2 or 3 times. But if you break the words down by roots, it can be much, much easier. So what is the root here? The root is ver. Ver means truth, right? Means true. Ver means true. And simile means similar, right? You can learn it that way. So verisimilitude means it has the appearance of truth, but it may or may not be, right? And what are all these other words that are related to ver? You can have the word like verify. And phi, the suffix are things that come out at the end, and then prefix, you already know, pre means before. There are things that come out in the beginning of a word, right? So the suffix phi, right? Phi, fict, fact, they all mean make, right? They all mean make, right? So verify means check if it's true or not, right? Verify. What else is another ver word that we have? We have verify. What about veracity? right? The veracity of a statement means how truthful his statement is, right? How believable his statement is, right? What else? What's another VR word that we have? And you could think of models of schools that have words like veritas, right? A lot of colleges and universities have the word, or Latin word, veritas in there because it means true, right? True or truth, right? What other VR words are there? So we have words like aver, which means like you strongly believe it's true, or you support the truth, right? Support, I don't want to say truth, but what you believe, right? You have words like aver. What about words like verdict, right? And you could break this word down too, because VR, means truth, and dict means words. Think about that. You have diction, dictionary, dictum, and all these other words that are this is a, portmanteau. It's two words basically combined, right? So verdict is what? I know you hear it in court cases a lot where the judge says to the jury, it's like, has the jury reached a verdict? But it basically means true decision, right? What is the decision, right? What is the result, right? Verdict, and you could have, I don't know, verification. Actually, I think I just did that. But, well, you know what I'm saying. You could have, study the words with roots. But there's one caveat to this, and I mention this word caveat very often, right? Caveat, which means warning, right? Warning or clarification, right? And the warning and clarification with roots is that just because you know that VR means truth, and a lot of kids, they try to stretch this, or they know too little, right? And they're like, oh, this must mean VR means truth for everything. It must be everything. But that's not true. But because what if you have words like verbal, right? Or verbose, or verbatim, right? This is actually a completely different root. VRB actually means words, right? Words. Verbose means very wordy, and verbatim means word for word, right? And just because you know VR, like verify, you're like, oh, it has to be true words or something, right? But it doesn't mean that. So you really need to be careful with studying the roots. Just because you know a little bit of the roots doesn't mean you know all the words, right? Roots should only be there to help you memorize words, not to, a lot of kids do this. They try to guess a word that they don't know on the SATs by just looking at the roots, but it can hurt you, right? So use it as a mnemonic with everything else that you have going on, right? And mnemonics are things that help you memorize.